Wonderful. I think we're live. Good morning, community. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Rahim, and I am the manager of National Workforce Solutions at Kara Collective. I am thrilled to be welcoming you all to our virtual discussion today. So for those of you who are new, Kara is a 30-year-old workforce development organization that runs social enterprises and training boot camps. Over the past 3 decades, we have helped people experiencing poverty move into nearly 12,000 jobs. So a few years ago, we asked ourselves, could we take all that we have learned after operating in Chicago for 30 years and share our best practices along with our best failures? We're also working to get folks into gainful employment. So thus, Kara Plus was born, which is our national expansion team. At Kara Plus, we partner with organizations that prepare talent for the workforce and with employers who are interested in attracting, hiring, and cultivating exceptional overlooked talent. So for today's discussion, we're going to be focusing on Adelante, which is a cohort-based training program designed to help adult job seekers gain the skills that they need to competitively enter the landscape from a digital perspective. So to date, we have run 4 cohorts of this digital literacy program, both in person and virtually. Participants learn a variety of skills, including using computers, using the internet, Microsoft Office and Google Suite, and also about workplace competencies. So what I personally think what makes Adelante really unique is how they have also weaved in things like financial literacy and applicable health and resiliency knowledge. So in true Kara fashion, it's really connecting the personal with the professional, right? Recognizing it's not just getting that job, it's staying in that job and figuring out how do you focus on both habits and skills that connect from your day-to-day life to just, your workspace. So over the next hour, we are going to be hearing from our colleagues at Kara Connects and Northwest Side Housing Center, who have partnered to run this program. We're going to be exploring what this digital literacy training actually looks like, as well as learnings and challenges. So to begin, we're going to do a quick round of introductions, and I'm going to ask our panelists to share your name, your title, and maybe one sentence about what you do with the program. So we'll start with Marielle, then Roxana, then Julie, and then Cindy.
Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Marielle Corona, and I am Senior Manager of Kara Connects, a dedicated mission-driven staffing firm and social enterprise of Kara Collective. And I'm also lead facilitator for Adelante.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Roxana Pereira. I work for Northwest Side Housing Center as a financial coach and also a co-facilitator for the Adelante program.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Chu, and I'm the Quality and Standards Manager here at Kara Collective. And my role in the Adelante program was to facilitate some of the digital literacy classes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Santana, MSW, Resilience Coordinator at Northwest Side Housing Center. I brought resilience building, health, and wellness topics to the cohorts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. So we'll be kind of facilitating an open discussion. And for those who are chiming in today via this live stream, you will also have the opportunity to kind of engage with us. We welcome you to use the comment section on YouTube to ask any questions as we continue our discussion. And I'll be there to monitor that as well and bring in your questions towards the end. So to kind of get us started, we'll start with Marielle. So Marielle, let's zoom out and just kind of first talk about Kara's relationship with Northwest Side Housing Center. Again, recognizing this partnership kind of had been formed a few years prior to Adelante being born. So how did that partnership come to be?
Sure. So back in 2015, 2016, James, Executive Director of Northwest Center, and Kara's Chief Program Officer, Bob White, met at a fellowship conference. And shortly after, Sasha Antenko, previously Director of Kara Connects, reached out to James, who shared was forming an FOC and was looking into partnering with a trusted and recognized workforce organization. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. And in 2016, the partnership was created without an MOU, and Connects began hosting mobile onboardings from Northwest Center offices. And later, I was brought on site where I spent about 3/5 of my time as Northwest Center's dedicated workforce professional.
Awesome. And Marielle, for those who don't know, could you tell us what an FOC and an MOU is?
Sure. So an FSO is a financial opportunity center, and an MOU is a memorandum of understanding.
Awesome. So I love that you referenced the fact that CARA and Northwest Side Housing Center, they didn't have a formal MOU in place, right? So typically when we have partnerships, we're establishing those in written agreement, and this was much more of an organic partnership. And at CARA, we often talk about we're working to remove barriers to employment, and there's a lot that we do and we don't do. So again, we're heavily relying on our partners to bring their expertise in when, it's something that CARA can answer. So we often talk about building relationships and really valuing this idea of partnerships over transactions, right? So I feel like this theme definitely played out with CARA and with Northwest Side Housing Center. So I'd love to hear more about just how Adelante came about.
Yeah, so in 2020, we submitted our RFP to Unidos US and Verizon Wireless, who had partnered and were accepting bids from organizations who had the potential to meet both their digital literacy and workforce outcomes, such as enroll 100 participants, successfully graduate 68 of those participants, and place 48 of them into employment within an 18-month period. Unidos US, aside from a peer exchange, had provided digital literacy modules in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and a high-level job readiness and financial literacy module as well. However, my experience as adjunct college faculty, I naturally developed a well-rounded curriculum and syllabus to create a rigorous academic experience that included financial coaching, health and resiliency, and workplace competencies. My goal was ultimately to merge Northwest Center and CARA's shared services via a holistic approach, but I couldn't do it alone. So I tagged in CARA's training team for workplace competencies and CARA's senior student development coordinator, who coordinated resume workshops and mock interviews for participants. But most importantly, I partnered with my fellow colleagues and experts who are here today to bring my vision alive. And so we took off. But remember, this was 2019, the good old days. But everything changed abruptly in 2020, as we know, and we had no choice, like many traditional in-person programming, but to quickly come up with an innovative solution. Since participants were simultaneously learning Microsoft Office and Google Classroom, Google Suite, it was natural that students create a Gmail account. In doing so, Google Classroom was an accessible app for them, and this is where I built a learning platform. There, students had access to review the learning modules and complete homework assignments and click on links shared during each class. But most importantly, it created a space where participants could build community and take part in discussion boards and upload helpful links and share resources among each other. So hence, we adapted our traditional in-class training into a virtual training through asynchronous and synchronous learning.
Thanks, Mariel. There's a couple of things that I want to kind of live up to here, which you mentioned, which is, having a fully fleshed out syllabus for this program, which highlights, both the initial expectations, which we were asked to deliver, right? And you kind of, I think, were able to step in and really zoom out and ask, how can we get more creative here, right? And just weave in additional topics and kind of leverage the expertise of folks across our enterprise, but also across our partners, right? So we weren't expected to have financial literacy weaved in. We weren't expected to have health and resiliency. These were add-ons that it sounds like we thoughtfully felt were relevant, especially in a digital space, especially in a pandemic. So I'd love to kind of zoom over to Roxana to hear more about just the contents of Adelante and where your specific role fit in, given your expertise with the Northwest Side Housing Center and what you do there day to day.
For the context, in our second cohort that we went digitally, I was able to add more content to the financial literacy. That was part of the curriculum, and I saw the need to adjust also our financial literacy and use these tools to make them to better inform them for the decisions that will take later in life, and also for their quality of life, to better their quality of life. So that was to make the participants get them ready when they have a job, to have stronger financial habits. And also I was brought up as a co-facilitator for the financial literacy for the Adelante program, and also having a one-to-one counseling sessions with them to prepare them for their future. Also in the second cohort, I had to make the lessons more to make the lessons more effective and engaging, I had to create a PowerPoint presentation covering each topic and adding more information and also trying to make it interactive. It was a challenge because we're entering in a phase that we did not have this. Using technology also was a part of learning experience for me in trying to covering all the topics like budget, savings, credit reports, credit cards, and all that information that they needed to prepare them for their for future and also for the present, because due to the situation that we were going through.
Awesome. Thanks, Roxana. So yeah, I mean, just taking a look at the syllabus, it seems very robust, right? So we might have a morning session focused on computer basics. And then in the afternoon, we're talking about money management or just specific coaching, right? So it sounds like you're probably having discussions with folks around choosing a bank account or how do you bank? What does that mean? So would you mind sharing more about what those like one-on-one conversations looked like? Specifically, what topics you focused on from that financial literacy angle?
Yeah, from the in my one-to-one sessions, I pretty much talk to each participant about their personal goals. Some of them, they were financial, how to manage their budget, or they did not know how to do it. So we work on that. We had a discussion about that. We did an action plan and a follow-up with that. And all depended on their own personal situation. Some of them, they just want to talk about more about how to get in a job. But in that situation, I also tap into budgeting and savings and really emphasizing these other financial tools that they needed in order to make them see how they will affect their lives in the future. So it was sort of like tapping in all the topics that I did cover in the program to also tap in their personal life, so they will be more effective as well too. So they could have better quality of life, improve their quality of life, or just make them see their situation in that moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Roxana. I feel like, partnering with workforce development organizations, we say this all the time, right? In our approach, it's important to meet participants where they're at, right? And like, what does that actually mean? A, when you're doing things virtually, and B, what does it mean in a pandemic, right? In a global pandemic where the job landscape is shifting, the skill sets required are shifting, and people's day-to-day challenges are changing as well, right? So I want to kind of pivot to this idea of health and resiliency, which is something that I think is truly unique. And just hearing about how that was so thoughtfully weaved into Adelante has been really interesting. So Cindy, I would just love to hear from you. What was your role in bringing this health and resiliency component into that program? And just like, what did that specifically look like during a day where folks were learning about money management or computer skills?
Sure. I really wanted to collaborate with other staff members at Northwest Center with a lens of bringing resilience building practices into programming. So I was excited that Maria was willing to bring me into the Adelante curriculum. And together with the AmeriCorps Health Corps Vista, we incorporated topics of physical and mental health, as well as well-being and resilience building practices. And we made sure to support the curriculum and it matched the skill that they were learning. For example, if they were learning Microsoft Word, we would discuss journaling as a tool for self-care and discovery. So we talked about what journaling is and how you can do it, pen and paper, but also if they wanted to familiarize themselves with Microsoft Word or play around with fonts and changing the page and different kind of special separating lines, they could do so or hold a journal on Microsoft Word. So I provided some prompts and it was up to them to, learn their skills that Julie had taught them, and then how we showed them how they can have a journal. If they were doing like mock interviews, in one of the weeks. So then I would go in and talk about breathing techniques like 478 and the importance of eye contact and organizing their materials. We saw some TED Talks on body language and building confidence with power poses, kind of like standing like a superhero, and how that is important, and learning the science behind something that kind of sounds silly, but it actually works.
Yeah, and I mean, again, just kind of looking at the way this program has been structured, I love the idea of, again, tying it from the professional to the personal, right? So if there was a session on how do you create a spreadsheet, right? Or financial literacy of building a budget, you were able to connect that to, well, let's talk about healthy eating, right? And how do you build a budget for like healthy groceries for the week, especially taking care of your body and your mind during a pandemic when things are stressful and uncertain. And it's important for folks to stay healthy. So I loved how that was so thoughtfully weaved in. And I guess focusing on the digital literacy piece, pivoting to Julie, would you mind sharing more just about what facilitation looked like and how you brought your specific expertise into this curriculum, and specifically like what you learned from that cohort doing things virtually and what was challenging?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yes, so in the spring of last year, in May 2020, Marielle actually reached out to the team that I'm on at Care Collective Solutions to ask if any of us would want to facilitate any part of the anti-digital literacy curriculum. And I raised my hand because I had experience as a computer tutor in Chicago Public Library branches, and I really do have a passion for digital literacy training. So in my day-to-day, I work with staff, provide support to staff. So this was just a perfect opportunity for me to do something participant-facing and do something that I really love. But I had only ever had experience teaching computer skills on an in-person, one-on-one basis. So I knew it would be a challenge right off the bat because we were all virtual at that point. But thankfully, I came in during the second cohort, and Marielle had already developed this robust curriculum. She basically handed me the module that she had supplemented with Unidos, Latinos at Work. So from that experience from one cohort before, it was just a matter of me, using that content and building off of it to make it engaging in a virtual class environment. So that curriculum, thankfully had a lot of video tutorials, which were very useful in the virtual environment. But they, in a physical classroom, you would show the video, or I would show the video, share my screen and actually walk through the steps that were highlighted in the video. And then I would ask participants in that group setting to go off and at the computer stations and practice that in real time. And then I would, individually work with them on any problems at their computer stations. But of course, in a virtual setting, in a virtual group class setting, there isn't that space for me to kind of walk around and individually go to each person. So what I found was challenging was that, the question became more about like, how do we make sure that everyone stays engaged while we ask individuals to share their personal screens and walk us through what they're doing on their screens. So, at the very beginning, we had to first even build some time to teach and then encourage participants to share their screens. So most participants had never had experience using computer, much less the Zoom, the video platform that we were using, and definitely not the Microsoft Office products or the Google products that we were working on. So we had to first start with the basic of how do I even share my screen. And so that was one of the biggest challenges. It's, we had to not only teach that skill, but we also had to make participants feel comfortable, get them comfortable, create an environment where participants could feel comfortable getting vulnerable, really, sharing their screen and kind of just highlighting or narrating what they were step by step, what they were doing, what they were seeing. So that was one of the challenges of kind of switching from thinking of an in-person training to a virtual training. And I think that was made easier, asking, was made easier because of the sense of trust and community that was already built by Cindy, Marielle, and Roxana. But I think the trick was just getting that first person to voluntarily share their screen, and then to really build off that person's bravery with a lot of enthusiasm and encouragement. And once that happens, I hope that creates a sense of relief for other participants to actually be willing to share their screen as well.
Thanks, Julie. I know a question that Kara has certainly been navigating over the past year and a half, along with a lot of workforce orgs, is often just, being able to take this in-person training, right, where you've got folks in a room. As a trainer facilitator, you're able to nudge and provoke in all the right ways, right? You just have more control, I think, in person. It's much harder, as we can tell now, to A, build community through a screen, and B, just figure out, is what I'm teaching effective, right? And is it landing? And also, how can I build that community and those connection points between folks on the screen and that relationship? So I feel like that's the question of the year, is just, how do you do things through a screen? So would love to hear from all of you. Cindy, maybe we'll start with Cindy, Roxana, and Marielle. Just what was challenging about teaching through the screen in the past cohort?
Not that it was challenging, but thinking about what the participants were doing. So since I was coming in towards the end of their sessions and they had already been on for an hour or so, just thinking about how they can practice mindfully. And I incorporated stretching before talking or having a conversation on health and wellness. Just acknowledging that sitting in front of the computer, your bodies may be exhausted, your eyes, your mind. Just ran through a series of stretches with them, making sure that they take breaks and remember that to take care of themselves and their bodies. And hopefully it stays with them, long term. And then we were able to recharge and have the conversation. And I think paying attention was just a little bit easier after that.
For me, it was just to find out where at one point where I will tap to make them to see that they are getting the lessons. Sometimes I will ask questions and they will have raise their hands, and some of them they will do it again, and then at one point I will call each of them, I said, hey, you, so each participant had even just a little bit of information or whatever they understood. So that's one of the ways that I could have some interactivity with them, and also make sure that they understand if they have questions about the topic. And that was one of the things but not challenging at all, because I knew that everybody was paying attention, and always thinking that making sure that make it kind of fun as well too. That was part of it. But definitely, a little bit challenging, I guess, because when you are doing this through Zoom, you never know if someone is just watching their phone or doing something else and not paying attention. And it's something that's out of your control, and the only control that you have is to facilitate the lessons and the topics that you are there for. Yeah. Marielle.
Yeah, so Julie and Roxana, you actually touched on this already. So for me, it's definitely that relationship building for successful engagement and retention. So as many may relate, there is a great advantage to having individualized and personalized high touch points with participant, student, or client. Fortunately, I learned that in online training, workshop, or class, you have to shift the authoritative power to your participants. So traditional in class, right? Think of it. It's completely normal for a facilitator, a teacher, instructor to have the authority in the classroom and stand before their students, right? The participants. However, like to encourage, how Julie was mentioning this comfort level, right? To encourage and motivate, you have to build this common ground, but it can't be done without trust. So you must yourself as a facilitator become vulnerable, right? You have to allow yourself to become vulnerable. When you do this, you create a culture of almost train the trainer, if you will. And we did this, and that only helped us with each cohort, right? Because we learned valuable lessons that allowed us to improve the next cohort and the next. And in turn, students became more confident, not only in their digital literacy skills, but their English skills, their English speaking skills, their public speaking skills, and their presentation skills. So all things that would help them in both their personal and professional lives.
Thanks, ladies. Yeah, this is what I'm hearing resonate, which is so true to so much of Kara's training, and I think our partners, is as a trainer, you cannot teach where you yourself are unwilling to go. And you'll hear our lead trainers at Kara say that, Miss Vicky, Mr. Jesse, Tracy, Joycey, Lauren, just often, as you mentioned, Mariel, you have to put yourself in the shoes of also being a student, right? And just like handing that power to someone, and also being able to acknowledge that there might be something a student or a participant has expertise in where we're willing to learn, right? And be challenged ourselves. So I would love to hear more of those specifics of the participants. So Mariel and Roxana, would you mind sharing just a highlight or a specific participant journey that really stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nancy Gonzalez immediately just comes to mind. She was actually one of our first cohort participants. Interesting story how she joined our program, because she called me from her hospital room, guys, explaining that she was sick and would have missed the first week of class, but was quite persistent in joining this first cohort, right? So she came in week 2, prepared and having caught up with our lessons and assignments. And most importantly, she came in with the motivation and determination needed to successfully graduate this program. And the girl had goals, let me tell you, and she had a plan. She would complete the cohort. She would get a job in a bank, so very specific. And she would achieve economic mobility to improve her and her family's quality of life. And guys, she did just that. After successfully completing and graduating the program, she continued working with both organizations simultaneously. She worked with Kara on employment opportunities, and she worked with Northwest Center on her financial goals. So soon after her Adelante graduation, we placed her in a temporary role through Kara Connects as a writer for Direct Tech. In this role, Nancy rewrote user-generated news via templates and software provided by that company for publication to help businesses succeed in the marketplace. And you guessed it, to successfully perform her role, she needed these digital literacy skills that she had gained in Adelante. Soon after, she was placed by our employment services team into her current and permanent role with JP Morgan Chase as a remittance processor. And earlier this year, she celebrated her 1-year anniversary. If that wasn't enough, she continued working with Roxana to reach her financial goals, including moving into a place of her own with her children.
Awesome. Nancy sounds like a rock star, and just, I think, a prime example of someone who, just showed up, identified her own goals. And I think, again, we're not handing anyone success. We're not handing anyone a job. Folks are showing up and doing the work, right? And earning that themselves. And we're just there to walk alongside them in their journey. So thank you for sharing that. And Roxana, I would love to hear maybe about someone you worked with that you helped them achieve a very specific financial goal in your coaching.
It was also in the first cohort that Yvette, when we did a one-to-one financial coaching, she had a lot of debt, but also she had some very good chunk of savings, and she wasn't sure what to do with that. So what I did, I plugged the numbers and I show him, how much she was paying and interest, and rather than, just trying to keep the money. And I say, this is the way that we can start a plan, and say, this is the way that you can distribute, and also think about figuring out how much you're paying, and if you're saving, you are not really saving this. So she took those steps, and she was able to pretty much after that debt-free, and she was feeling less stressed because that was causing her stress, and she didn't know what to do because she didn't know what to do. So that was part of the success that she told me one day, I feel much better because I got out of my debt. Now I can start savings, and I feel much better that I will be saving more than I was paying in interest. So that was one of the success, as well some others too, but this is one of the one that is standing out right now. So, yeah.
Awesome. And one thing I'd also like to highlight, as we've mentioned so much at Kara, is, the journey does not stop when a participant gets the job, right? We have coaches who are working with participants to hit that 1 year, which is, how they graduate. So if you're a few months in, we recognize life's hurdles get in the way, right? So maybe there's a scenario where a participant needs to re-reference what Cindy's taught about resilience or health or effective budgeting in a different way. So I think that's awesome. And it's exciting to see where our next, cohort leads with Adelante. So to wrap us up, I have a final question, and then we'll reference questions posed in the chat. For all of you ladies thinking about just the past cohort and where we're headed for the future, what might be one key takeaway or learning that you have for future skills trainings? So we'll start with Cindy and then go to Julie.
Sure. For me, a key takeaway for doing digital literacy, especially over computer, is just if I was making a PowerPoint for the students, just making sure that I don't stay with that information and that I can share the content and make it interactive for all of the students. They received the deck of slides. It was also a resource for them, like a resource guide. It was as interactive as possible with additional reading materials if they wanted to explore more, and just always encourage them to follow up with anything if they had any questions, or followed up with them to make sure that what I was delivering was what they were looking for.
Yeah. So some takeaways for me in what we can look forward to for future skills training is that in the virtual environment, patience is very important for the entire group, but that even if we were in person, that's something that I would want to maintain. So previously, I kind of gave an example of an in-class situation where I would ask everybody to go off and work at their individual computer stations. But an element of virtual training that I have come to appreciate is that shared experience of looking at and having an individual share their own learnings with the entire class. I think that builds a sense of community and engagement, and it also lessens the chance of somebody having that same question maybe later on, because you're all learning together at the same time. It reinforces also that learning. If somebody already knows it, they may even choose to raise their hand and explain how to get through a certain problem together. So that, again, builds a sense of community. So that's one takeaway that I would like to explore further for future skills training.
I can hop in, or go ahead, Roxana. I see you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Roxana.
Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, yeah. I think what Julie and Cindy have shared so far resonate with me. So I can't help but think, give yourself grace. If your programming, your in-person traditional programming has just stopped, if you are hesitant of adapting it to a virtual classroom, don't be afraid to take that risk. Don't be afraid of being innovative and exercising your creative muscles to tackle a problem for the greater good. And, adapting our program from traditional in-class to a virtual class experience was scary, for sure. But here we are, 3 virtual cohorts under our belts today. And I'm actually happy to share that Unidos US and Verizon awarded us $100,000 to sustain our program through at least 2023. So just remember, if you allow yourself to have a safe space for failure, you will quickly realize that you will be received with constructive feedback and support from those around you.
Yeah, the Adelante program was such a success in an organization that other clients are asking, when is going to be the next cohort? So that tells us a lot about it. Also, takeaway from me will be adding more tweaking a little bit the lessons in my financial literacy. Also, in the budget content, I would like to add more real samples that is relevant to the program. and also I will encourage them to set a financial goal so that way they can work in their goal as well, and also working that will work something with the financial coaching as well too. And I have in mind, I hope it works, and I hope everything works out at the end. I want to challenge them to start savings because it's very important. I think it's very, very important, and to have a goal for that, and at the end of the program, have them a $50 reward for going into their savings account. So, kind of, that will be one of the things that I will add for it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been awesome to hear about just like the growth and evolution of where the program started, where you are now, and for this exciting success and future cohorts coming up. So we've got a little bit of time left, and I would love to transition it to the audience and open it up for questions. I'm going to do a quick scan of the chat box to see if we have any questions coming in. So we'll give it a minute. I know that one question I received via email, and I'm going to open this up to the audience, is what is one assumption that you all had as participants kind of going into this that was challenged for yourself? So like what might have been an assumption or a stereotype you thought you would have to navigate, and how was that challenged with doing things virtually?
I'll take that one. An assumption was actually a good assumption, which was that we were going to have low enrollment. So, basic digital literacy program. And here we are asking people to log on the Zoom link and open their laptops and troubleshoot from home and navigate a mouse and type this into a chat. And it's like, wait a minute, am I holding this thing upside down, right? This laptop. So a good assumption and spot on. We did lose some folks, right? Because we were sheltered in place, right? And we're unable to have that high touch point. So what we learned from that and what we are applying this time around with the grant we were recently awarded through 2023 is we're taking a hybrid approach. So we're going, because we don't want to lose people again, right? And we want to be able to be inclusive. So we're going to do 2 weeks full in-person training. And this is the opportunity we're going to take to teach you everything about hardware and software. First and foremost, how do you navigate all the things that I said? How do you create an email account? How are you able to join a Zoom, share your camera, mute your speaker, all those basic things. And then the rest of the 6 weeks will be 100% virtual because you've been trained and prepared to actually do this from home.
Thanks, Mariel. I have another question that I might pose to Julie and Mariel. So Nathan is asking, how do facilitators manage a variety of skill levels in a digital skills training, right? So for example, you might have people in the room who have very minimal basic skills, and then you might have other participants who have more fundamentals. So how do you balance that when you're trying to achieve a specific class and objectives?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So what I was mentioning earlier about patience, that's really key in understanding, different participants' level of engagement. So, in a class where we're going over Excel basics, if somebody, or even PowerPoint basics, because I have a solid example there of somebody having some previous knowledge of using PowerPoint, that became clear when I would ask questions about like what something in PowerPoint was called. What is a slide, right? So once that becomes clear that one person has more experience, you can actually tap on them during that class to help explain to another participant who has maybe less experience with PowerPoint, and keep that level of engagement there. Again, we were having individuals share their screens for very specific problems that they were seeing on their screens. And if you already have that sense of community built in there, more likely than not, you're going to have participants actually raise their hand and say, don't you do this? Isn't this how you would do this? Or I would do this. So that's how we dealt with the different levels of skills.
Sorry, okay. CW Education and Intake asks, were there other incentives that you all offered to the participants, like for other trainings, like the $50 for the savings account? Was like, I guess, yeah, was there any incentive for participants to stay in the program and like finish it through the end?
No incentives. Yeah, no incentives. Upon graduation, we gifted everyone $50 gift card. And we also, Unidos had offered a laptop buying program. So those who had successfully completed the program had an option to buy a laptop or basically keep the one that we had lent them for $50. But no other incentive, guys.
Yeah. And again, I think just the general incentive of you're participating in this program, we're asking you to show up, put in the work. It's often true of care, right? Accountability being an important value, and just holding folks to do the work. And also just the coaching that comes with that, I think, is always a value add. So Gabriel asks, so you've all touched on this somewhat, but what pivots from the original curriculum did you intend to maintain through a post-pandemic world, right? So if you've made any adaptations in the past year and a half, are there things that you want to keep even after we kind of go through this, overcome this pandemic, that's still going to be relevant for folks?
In the terms of financial literacy, I think most of it will have to be the content. It will have to be kept in the curriculum, adding more information as you know, and also using the tools from digital literacy, like using Excel to tailor their own budget, and also using PowerPoint to like setting goals, and so they can have a you know, sometimes people are visual and they can add just some pictures. We did that in the first cohort because we were 1-to-1. In the second cohort, it was a little bit more challenging, but I'm gonna try to implement that in the next cohorts too as well too. And also spending more time with participants, because Zoom, like Julie was saying, you know, some of them knew more, some of them they did not know more. So it was a little bit more time that we need to spend in order for them to really capture what they were learning.
I'll just add, Sarah, that we are definitely keeping all of our modules, right? Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Julie created an Outlook module, so I have to throw that in, right? Where you will typically work on these software programs, whether at home or at school or work. But with that being said, you know, and Roxana talking about making it more interactive, we definitely got rid of all of our, right? Because it was set for in class traditional training. So we got rid of all our forms, like hard copies, right? And we turned everything into fillable forms to make it more engaging, right? But now, this time around with the cohort, we actually do have a learning platform which we'll be using, which is Blackboard. And then additionally, we'll be using Nearpod. So this is to what Roxana's point, for those who learn, you know, they're better learners auditory or, you know, visual or even sensory. Nearpod is going to allow this for that learning experience. And something that we've added in is actually DEI into the learning modules this time around. So very exciting changes.
I remember my days of Blackboard in high school and college. And I agree with you, Ariel. I think a lot of workforce organizations are now exploring other platforms where they're able to take in-person trainings and try and, you know, digitize them or do that digital transformation. So to wrap us up, we have a final question from Ellen, who is asking, why and how did you come to the name Adelante, and what is the significance of that name?
So I don't see anyone unmuting, but Adelante means forward in Spanish. So originally, Unidos US and Verizon Wireless designed this program for Latinos so that they could gain the digital literacy skills needed to enter the workforce. So we decided to name it Adelante, forward. But we obviously opened it up to make it more inclusive versus exclusive, right? Just to Latinos, but it's Adelante, moving forward in the digital literacy.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm going to wrap us up. I appreciate you showing up and sharing all of your learning and expertise. And for those who are able to kind of tune in for today's discussion, we hope that you found this to be a meaningful space to learn from our colleagues. So, as a member of Cara Plus, I will be continuing to build out these monthly touch points with different events on different topics. So if you have any questions, you can always email me at learn@carachicago.org. I also host a quarterly training called Workforce Development Solutions Lab. So that is in space for workforce orgs to come and learn from us in a peer-based cohort where we're sharing our best practices, our best failures, and taking a deeper dive into Cara's own service delivery model, from recruitment to socio-emotional skills training to job placement to coaching. So yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. And thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of the day.